Welcome to another edition of the In the Mouth of Dorkness podcast. Joining me today is the indie dork himself. How's it going, Billy?
It's going great.
As usual.
I don't know how else to be.
I am your host for the day, Brad Gullickson, the Mouth of Dork. Welcome back to another awesome CHATcast. We've been killing it lately.
Yeah, we've been doing a lot. This is nice. It's nice to be back in the business of interviewing people for ITMOD.
Yeah, one a week. We had Isa Lopez the week before, Henry McComas and Andre Gower.
Yeah, love those guys.
I mean, yeah, we've had a lot of great conversations. And I am super excited for our listeners today. We are talking to Graham Skipper, the director of Sequence Break. Billy, yes. You made this happen.
I did make this happen because I make fun and awesome things happen sometimes.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff falls through. We don't talk about that. But no, so Graham Skipper made a movie called Sequence Break, which, if you want to know what's up with it, basically think Videodrome from Cronenberg. And updated for the modern era, looking back at arcade games?
Yeah.
I mean, kind of. There's a lot more going on there, but like that's the visual style that he goes for.
It comes out on Shudder
Yep.
on the 24th of May.
Right. So depending on when this interview is out,
It's actually you should be able to watch it right now.
Right.
Yes.
Let's say that. And if you don't have Shudder, like, look, guys, its annual subscription for a year is $47.88.
Free trial, man.
Free trial. You can find a 30% off discount, so it costs you $2.96 a month. I'm not saying that that's what I'm spending on it. It is. But, guys, don't have a cup of coffee tomorrow morning. Get yourself an annual subscription for Shudder. It's worth it. They're fucking amazing.
Yeah, I have Shudder as well. And this is going to be the Shudder promo podcast.
A little bit, yeah.
They really should pay us for this, but we're going to give them a little free, juicy advertisement on it.
But also, Shudder, what's up, guys?
Yeah.
Show us
come
some
on.
love.
And all right, so you don't necessarily have to have watched the film to appreciate this interview. We don't really spoil anything about the movie other than some really rad special effects.
Yep.
Some digital finger touching of the arcade machine.
Just wait till you get to that part of the conversation.
So yeah, here's our interview with Graham Skipper. Join us afterwards for the breakdown.
Yeah.
Well, I was super excited to see the notice that came out, man. I guess that even in like the press advertisement they put out for this, they sort of billed this like it was going to be your feature debut. But then I was looking at your IMDb and saw you did a thing about clowns. Do you consider this your feature debut?
I do, yeah. You know, Space Clown was a fun little sort of test project that me and some friends did a couple years ago, just to really get together and make something silly in our backyard. But with this, with Sequence Break, you know, I really feel like this is the first real film that I've made, and definitely, it definitely speaks better to who I am as a filmmaker and what I want to put out there.
Well, I like that answer because I definitely want to talk about who you are as a filmmaker, having seen Sequence Break. I dug watching the movie, man, but that movie is weird. Like, it's really weird. And then you seem like a really weird too. So I want to know just how weird are you? Like why that? Well, actually, let me throw that question to Brad because I like Brad's angle on that question.
Well, when I was watching the film, it seemed obvious to me that you were inspired by Cronenberg and Videodrome.
Yes,
Is that
most
fair
definitely.
to say? Yeah.
Yeah.
But what's interesting to me is that Cronenberg was tackling a modern medium with VHS and television transmissions, whereas you are reaching back to the arcade.
Yes, yeah, that was definitely something that that struck me as I started revisiting Videodrome. When I knew I wanted to take a body horror aspect to this, of course, there's nobody better to be your inspiration than Cronenberg. But for me, what Cronenberg I think does best is he really is unique in his ability to cinematically make metaphor real. You know, like you might have other directors that, you know, it's through dialogue or it's through, you know, character choices or plot, you know, where they get along their point, you know, or their philosophy that they're trying to make. And I love that Cronenberg does it in a way that is purely cinematic. You couldn't do that any other way. And, you know, I love, you know, like it's the same sort of thrill I get when I see like a live circus show where it's something that I can, you know, that seeing it live has that much more impact because it is something that can only be done in the flesh. And with Cronenberg, you know, you see a film like Videodrome and, you know, he's talking about, you know, a fear of new technology, a lust for new technology. He's talking about cancer. He's talking about, you know, changes and he's doing all of that in such a way that is unlike anything else that I've ever seen. And so for me, you know, this story to me is ultimately about a guy that's caught in a whirlwind of change that he's not ready for, and also caught between sort of a love and a lust, and
yeah.
you know, and then also, like you said, it's certainly a comment on nostalgia. You know, I am nostalgic for all of these things, like video games or VHS, you know, as we all are for the things that we grew up. But I wanted to sort of explore a little bit, you know, maybe the darker side of nostalgia, of holding on to what we look backwards at rather than forwards, and not necessarily making a statement about it, but just kind of wondering, what does that do to us? And as it turns out, it biomechanically mutates us, as I found.
Well, that's what I took away from it. Is, you know, by obsessing over the arcade lifestyle of yesteryear, it really is the perfect metaphor for trapped man-childness.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, it's funny. It's like especially like in the wake of The Last Jedi, and kind of seeing how, you know, vehemently people are so angry, you know, these like, you know, 40-year-old guys that are so mad about this movie, you know, and it's just an interesting state of the world where we're so attached, understandably, to those things that we grew up with, that we begin to try to mold them into what we want them to be. And I think that can start to be dangerous, because then you prevent yourself from enjoying something that I think from a blank slate, you might actually have enjoyed.
Now, what I was fascinated by, as you said, this, you know, like Cronenberg, this film is purely cinematic. You cannot tell this story in, you know, prose or in any other format, really. But in embracing the image, you have to pull out some crazy moments of cinema. Like, so much of this film relies on the screen and what you're seeing.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, that was, you know, from the get-go, when I first, and I mean, in the original script, it's you know, it's written this way. Like, from the get-go, I wanted to really do a deep dive into sort of dream imagery. You know, I mean, to in a literal way, like the melting skull, the like Technicolor melting skull. It's not I mean, that was literally a dream that I had, you know, and so, you know, and I love movies that do that. Like, I really, like, Upstream Color was a big inspiration to me.
Yeah.
You know, a movie that is really bonkers and weird and talks about a lot of lofty philosophical stuff, but at the same time, it has this visual aesthetic where, you know, it sort of makes the tangible world really magical. And so, you know, I sat down with my DP, Brian Sowell, and the you know, the things that we, you know, the imagery that we looked at, you know, it was all about how do we sort of make the boldest choice here, you know, like instead of trying to make this look, you know, totally kitchen sink natural, well, why don't we have Argento lighting? You know, why don't we, you know, accentuate this or that just to make it more interesting? Because yeah, I agree with you. I think that visually, you know, it's vital to a movie like this that, you know, narratively is pretty is pretty out there, that I just really wanted people to go along for the ride and to have a dreamlike quality where by the end they're kind of sitting there stunned and feeling like they just woke up.
Yeah. You know, when Brad and I were talking before we got on the phone with you, he was talking about his take on the Cronenberg influence that he saw through it, and he used the word pulsating. He could feel Cronenberg pulsating through the movie. And I like that word choice because like you were just saying about the visual effects and making something stand out as dreamlike, but like there are visually punctuated moments, like for example, the pulsating circuit board in the course of that movie, where you see that it sort of grows and it melts and then it starts taking on a life of its own. I mean, that's a really, it is a really stunning image to see in a movie, and that thing is wired into my brain now. Thank you for that, Graham.
Thank you.
But it's the thing that stands out. I'm kind of curious. Obviously, that's not something that you just work on with your cinematographer. Like, who did you guys work with to do the effects for this?
So our special effects team was Josh and Sierra Russell, who I had worked with before on Beyond the Gates and another project called Bad Apples and a few other things. So I knew them well, and from the very beginning, they were they might even be the first crew that was that was hired on. And really, it was about giving them my sort of my main points, my main inspirations. We talked obviously a lot about Cronenberg and just talked about generally what the feel of it was, and that we really wanted to focus on the sexuality of what was happening there. And then letting them come back to me, they said, okay, give us like a week and let us kind of sketch out some stuff. And I was very fortunate in that they were like completely on the same page. And everything that they showed me, it was exactly what I had envisioned. And in the script, I tried to be as descriptive as I could. And they just really were able to take that and do something really special with it. I was very, very lucky to have them because that to me is really a cornerstone of the film.
Well, like you've been saying, I think the movie, it's an essential element of a movie that's sort of an homage to Cronenberg and exploring that sort of style of filmmaking to have the effects work right. And man, they pop in the movie. That I joked a little bit about it while I was asking the question, but the images that they put together for the video arcade machine are something that completely and totally stick with you. I mean, they're gnarly, and but it wasn't just Cronenberg. Like I love the shot of the hand pushing out through the screen. The Nightmare on Elm Street. Like I love that effect.
That, in fact, I think that in the script, I think I say, a la Nightmare on Elm Street.
So, my question is, as somebody who wears the influences on your sleeve, what's the danger of writing that line between originality and nostalgia?
That is a good question. For me, I wanted to take inspiration from, but not copy. And so I took a look at, what makes Cronenberg unique, and what makes him, what is it about his work that's so powerful to me? And when I sort of explored those ideas of that he's making metaphor flesh, and that he's not, that he's turning intangible things into biological things. That was sort of the jumping off point. But I didn't want to, for me, Cronenberg's very cold, and I wanted this to be more of like a warm movie. It gets cold. I guess what I mean is that, this is a movie that at its heart is a love story. And I think that, a lot of Cronenberg films like Videodrome and stuff, it's more about, the fleshy bizarrety that's happening, and less about the emotional life of Max Wren. I think that's different, than in The Fly, where personally I think that's one of the greatest on-screen romances, in cinema history. But yeah, so I wanted to take inspiration from it and then, and then roll with it and you know, but not ape anything. You know, it's hard. It's a fine line, and a lot of people, you know, people might call it a ripoff, and that's fine, you know, if that's what they think. But I think that, like, when I see a movie, even if it's something that is reminiscent of another artist that I've seen, as long as it is played straight and as long as it's played honestly and earnestly, then I go with it. And you know, that's really what I wanted to do with this, is just be as earnest as I could and tell as honest a story as I could, within the, you know, within that world of body horror, and biomechanical sexuality.
I like how that sentence goes. Anything that ends in and biomechanical sexuality, like, yeah, all right, I'm there, you got it.
Right.
But no, I guess I was sort of thinking about your comment earlier about, you know, while Brad was asking that question, you were kind of speaking to that about The Last Jedi and the way that people really sort of interact with that. Like, I guess, based on sort of the way that you brought it into the conversation, that you and I are very much on the same page with that, and that The Last Jedi is a great movie, and it's kind of frustrating that people get sort of hung up on what a Star Wars movie should or shouldn't be because it's a Star Wars thing.
Right.
And that's a really tough conversation to have. And I recognize that there are a lot of people who have issues with The Last Jedi. I don't want to get hung up on The Last Jedi and have a conversation about that, because we'll be here for an hour, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, there's reasonable criticisms and there's reasons not to connect with that movie, and that's all fine, fair enough. But I think what we were kind of really getting at is, like, the people who just sort of latch on to being anti to it because it's not exactly the thing that they do. And you're sort of exploring what I guess I would sort of think is a more positive intonation of nostalgia, which is like, I look at these things that came before and I want to do something with it. And I guess what I want to focus in on is, are you cognizant of walking that line between sort of what people look at as a dangerous or a toxic nostalgia by, you know, sort of looking at what came before?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that it's impossible as an artist to not be drawing inspiration from the things that, like, made you want to be an artist, or the things that, you know, that informed you. So I think that's, you know, it's impossible to make something in a vacuum. You know, but I think too, like, that was one of the reasons why it was really important to me to set the movie present day. You know, it's funny because people talk about how it has a retro feel to it. But I wanted to make a point about, you know, this is somebody that is living right now, that is stuck in the past. And not that that's necessarily a bad thing, but that it could be a hindering thing. You know, like sometimes I see, you know, I don't know, in a lot of, and whether it's film criticism or even just talking to people, you know, our age, you know, like I'm 35, right? So talking to people my age about movies, that sometimes there are people that I'll talk to that are like, there hasn't been a good movie made after 1986, you know? And I'm like, that's such bullshit, you know, and you're limiting yourself to, you know, from what I think, you know, could be a much more fulfilling art, you know, cinematic experience. And I really think that a lot of that just comes from, you know, I want things to always be exactly the same as they were, you know, when I was a kid. And that's sort of what I was trying to get at, is that I think it's totally, I mean, hell, you know, I have an arcade game in my house. You know, I still have all my old NES games. I have a VHS collection. You know, I am super nostalgic and I love that stuff. But I also, you know, buy Blu-rays when they first come out, and I love the hell out of The Last Jedi, you know?
Well, you have made a career, or you're making a career where you're operating in a very, you know, a geeky realm. And I would say, you know, you're the horror geek in particular, very passionate, very opinionated, ready to have a conversation with their creators. And now with social media, you have an opportunity to talk to them one-on-one in ways that, you know, guys like Cronenberg never had that chance.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm asking is, you know, as you're selling this film out into the world and talking to these people, I mean, what is the reception? You know, how willing are these 30-year-olds like us to join you on your journey?
I mean, I'll tell you, horror fans and people in the horror community are like the best people on the planet. And I love talking to people, and I love horror. I consume the same stuff everybody does, and I'm thrilled by it. And I'm also thrilled with the fact that people can reach out to me on Twitter, and I can have a really meaningful conversation about stuff. And I really feel like, especially in the horror world, if you're earnest about something and you're earnest about what you, about what you believe and what you, and what you like, and you take the art seriously and you treat it as art, then people will respect it and people will want to be a part of it. And I've been very lucky that so far, the response has just been wonderful, and everybody in this community is so supportive, and I'm just so, I'm so grateful for the fact that I'm working right now and I'm able to be the super nerd that I am and make cool stuff for people that feel similarly that I do. It's a really special time, I think, to be an indie filmmaker for exactly the reasons that you said, that you get to have that dialogue in more than just, what you put on screen. That there's now sort of a personal layer to it. And that just feels really special to me.
And, with Sequence Break, it's premiering on Shudder. I mean, that's a platform I would have killed for when I was 12 years old.
Oh yeah. I mean, look, Shudder is, and I'm saying this not just because they're putting out my movie. I mean, I've been a customer of theirs for 3 years. They do such a great job, and they, like I said, they treat it seriously. And what I hate is that people like us that love horror and that love this genre, it's so frustrating to me that even still, people are, trying to call horror movies thrillers the minute they're good.
Yeah.
It kills me. And so I want to, I don't know. It's just, it's great to have a platform like that really takes it seriously and gives it a place to live and to thrive in front of a community that loves it, that loves it exactly, for the reasons that I do.
Yeah, I don't want to make it like the conversation sort of a Shudder advertisement, but yes, it's exactly that. And the way that they curate their selections and the titles that they bring out to bear, to me, that's where you see the value, where they really put value on the art, is that they're going out and they're finding these 80s trash films, and literally street trash.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And they're lovingly bringing it back and putting it in a featured section. But even as I'm a customer too of theirs, and even the television stuff that they do, where they have the live channels going. I'm cord cutter. I've completely gotten away from cable television, and I will on the weekend just put on the Shudder TV channel and see what's there.
I do the same thing.
It's right. But that to me in my head, that's really where you feel the love that comes in. And I guess that's kind of what I guess that's what it is too. Like you were saying about community and art and having the ability to interact with people and have them treat the genre, I guess, with respect, because it's so funny, right? So I guess in 2 or 3 movies, right, when you've got a real solid budget underneath you in a major production studio putting out whatever's coming out of your brain next, you're not going to make thriller movies. You're going to still be a horror director.
I will always be a horror director. Man, I got into such an argument with somebody one time when they were trying to tell me that The Exorcist was a psychological thriller. And I was like, I was not having it. But yeah, to piggyback on what you said about the Shudder Live TV thing, it's interesting that we talk about nostalgia, and for me, one of the reasons that I love that live TV thing is because it reminds me of watching USA Up All Night, or whatever, whatever cable channel that we had. I don't even remember what they were called now, that I could stay up late and watch these crazy things. And I was sort of gifted with whatever, whatever this channel wanted to show me. And that was how I discovered a ton of the stuff that I really love, and so I think that, it circles back a little bit to us talking about Sequence Break and about like its sort of statements on nostalgia, is I think that, ultimately what I really wanted to get across and what I truly believe is that I think that there is there's a balancing act that we can all find in our lives where, we can appreciate what's come before, and we can even try to emulate, stuff that, we used to really love and be surrounded by it and use that to inform our lives. But it doesn't have to just be that. I think, Shudder is a great example of sort of a combination of the old and the new of, I get the same thrill of looking through Shudder as I used to in my old, VHS rental store horror section. Of like, ooh, what's this with this crazy art? It's the same thing with Demon Wind the other day. They just had this movie Demon Wind. I'd never heard of it, but man, it had a badass cover that had absolutely nothing to do with the movie. But I watched it.
Yeah. Well, I feel like Billy and I are always talking about how we're in a new golden age of horror films. And you look at a film like Sequence Break, where it is speaking to something beyond its effects and gore and what have you. It is commenting on what it's like to be in your mid-30s and having to move forward with your life. And so many horror films are speaking to the now. But to your point, when those films succeed, like Get Out or The Exorcist or It Follows or whatever, they're like, well, it's not really a horror film. It's a thriller, or it's a psychological terror experience, or whatever BS they come up with.
Right.
Why is that though? Why does mass media have to relabel horror?
That's a good question. I think that it's a holdover from almost like a video nasty mentality.
Right.
Like we're not in the UK, right? But I feel like there was sort of a similar mentality to that here in the States of this stuff is trash and this stuff is high art. And fortunately I think that's starting to change, I think that it's becoming more and more laughable when, some a newspaper article calls The Witch a thriller, and Get Out, I get it, and I think that there's definitely sort of something in the public consciousness that says if there's something deeper than blood and gore, then it must be a thriller. I of course disagree with that, and I think part of the beauty of horror is that I love everything from Street Trash to Get Out to Rosemary's Baby to House on Haunted Hill, and horror to me is a very broad umbrella that kind of covers all of that stuff. And I love that horror fans within that umbrella, they can like whatever they want, and I have that, that's totally my opinion is I think, man, if somebody loves Driller Killer, but they're not into The Witch, okay. I don't care, that's great. I like both of them. I think that we all should be allowed to like the stuff that we like. And, I prefer to not, I don't post a lot about stuff that I dislike because I just, I like being more positive, but if people like stuff and don't like stuff, and, I really feel like things are changing because of how popular independent horror is getting. And this is hard too, because I know we all live in a bubble, I pay very close attention to indie horror, and I know that maybe the populace doesn't as much. But I think that the more that we see things, getting lots of attention, It Follows or Get Out or stuff like that, that people I guess maybe are calling elevated horror. Well, at least now we're moving from thriller to elevated horror. And
right, horror is still in the name now. Yeah,
at least now they're admitting it's a horror movie. Although I still don't like the elevated bit, because I'm like, What's wrong with Basket Case, man?
Right. What does that mean? Elevated. Great. Now we've got high and lowbrow horror films to figure out too. This is ridiculous.
Oh yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, yeah. I mean, I love all that stuff, and I think that's all really important. You know, like I think that's why like things like the American Genre Film Archive and places like that, you know, or like Severin Films, you know, releasing Kathy's Curse. You know, it's like these movies are just as important as, you know, other more, quote, elevated stuff. So, you know, I want to continue to be a voice for, you know, horror can be powerful in any of its forms, and so it should all be respected and enjoyed.
I like what you said a lot about like talking positively about the things that you like and engaging with people. Like that's one of my axes that I like. That's my soapbox all the time, man. Is I feel like these days it's hard for people to praise something without knocking something else down. Like, I like this because it's better than this, or I like this because it's not this. And I recognize that to a certain extent, to have a conversation, you have to juxtapose things. But I sort of think we've lost that fine art of like, I like this because it's not this, and that other thing is garbage. And since this is not garbage, I like it. It's very frustrating sometimes to have a conversation when people sort of can't separate, like you were saying, like, hey man, some people like this and other people like that, and that's all great, and we can all like our own things. Like, I want more of that in the world, you know?
Yeah, I do too. I think it's, and plus, I mean, honestly, I generally can find something good about almost every movie I see, you know? Like, I go into movies really wanting to like them, and you know, and obviously I don't jump over the moon about all of them, but,
right.
You know, I don't know, I love sharing the things that I like.
Yeah. How do you approach movies when you watch them? Let me say it like this. When I watch a movie, I find that I tend to connect most with the filmmaking process, and I think it's because I talk to a lot of independent filmmakers, and I have a lot of conversations about how people are making movies. So, like, constantly when I'm engaging with a movie, I'm sort of thinking about how are people putting it together and what's going into it. I think about what it means, and I watch the pretty pictures. Brad's shaking his head at me. He's really judging me for that approach. But, Brad, that's my truth. That's how I approach movies. I was pretty curious, like, what do you go into when you're looking for?
What am I looking for when I go see a movie?
Connect with, yeah.
You know, it's one of the few things. I think primary is I want to be surprised. You know, show me something that I've never seen before. You know, for me, originality goes a long way, and I can really overlook, you know, like technical flaws and stuff don't bother me as much as something being original. You know, and, you know, for me, I tell people, I say when I see a movie, I either want to see a 0 or a 10. You know?
Yeah.
You know, the biggest sin I think a movie can do for me is to be like mediocre or be boring or be milquetoast, you know? You know, show me something that's, you know, whether it's really fun or super thought provoking or really intense or, you know, just totally off the wall bonkers. Like, those are the movies that I really respect and that I really, you know, that I want to go back and see more and more. And it's those filmmakers that I really attach to. I mean, it's like, you know, killing of a sacred deer, you know?
Yep.
It's like you watch that movie and you go, man, here is a voice that is, you know, completely original, and a movie that I've never seen anything like this before. These acting choices are like so bizarre, but oddly work, you know? Yeah, so I think that's the thing for me. I just show me something new, you know, like that's what really gets me going.
I gotta tell you, I mean, hearing that, I would expect you to say that, having seen Sequence Break and what you produce. I mean, because in my head, like, right, you're saying, I want to see something original, a 0 or a 10, but I want to be shocked. And in my head, I'm seeing the moment where Chase Williamson is in front of that arcade machine, and it's turning into dough, and there's finger digital penetration into the electronic piece, and there's an orgasm face in Chase Williamson. Like, yeah, I think you're practicing what you dig, definitely.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That really is. That was a driving goal. That was a driving goal in what we were doing.
Well, so I'm a little bit curious, like, just in terms of, like, the practical, right? So, like, let's take that scene as an example. Like, what's that conversation like with Chase when you're sort of explaining to him what you want to capture in this moment? Is he there with you, or do you have to coach him up to it?
No, one thing about Chase is he is so in the moment, and so open and present that was some of the easiest stuff, honestly. He, as an actor, one thing I really love about him is just how, like, he is, I don't know what the right word would be, maybe like blank slate he is, to where he just sort of instantly, I don't know, he has an innate sense of, like, what you're going for, but he also, the minute you give him any kind of direction, he's able to just totally, let that sink in and alter what he's doing. In those specific moments, like the more, like, I call them the sex scenes with the machine, and reviews have sort of mentioned this before, so I don't think that it's a spoiler, but in those moments, literally it was me just off camera, walking him through it, and saying, all right, treat the button like a nipple, and him, and him going right along with it. I need you to moan, hold that moan, and it was really just amazing, sort of experience of being able to take something that's so sort of out there and hard to even describe exactly on paper, and then be able to have that kind of shorthand with him where literally we could walk through that process together, and have him just be able to 100% nail it. Yeah, he was great.
But that requires a lot of trust on his part that he knows that you're going to pull this off.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's always interesting. It's like, I think for me, coming from an acting standpoint, my sort of opinion is that the actor always, must trust the director, because otherwise you're going to be having a miserable experience. And I think that's a part of choosing who you work with and, choosing, what you work on. But like, I think, and I feel like everybody in this cast, they really give me, so much trust and so much faith in this really weird thing. And everybody also, that was the other thing, is everybody got it, from day one. It was just like, yeah, I get what you're going for. And I think a lot of that too, especially from an acting standpoint, was rooted in, I wanted this to be a love story, and I wanted this to be rooted in a very real human thing. And I think that's something that I know for me as an actor, that's always a gift. When you say things like objectives and intentions and moments of personality are really important to me. And it's not just Splatterfest. Splatterfest is great, but
right.
you want you're always really happy when you get some real meat in there. And so I made that very clear from the beginning, as I wanted that to be to be one of our focuses is the meat of the roles.
Well, now, going forward, are you looking to make directing your primary focus? Are you going to continue to perform in other people's films? I mean, what's your game plan? It's funny. Everybody asks me that, and for me, I always just go, I love both of these things so much, and for me, making horror movies is all about creating something really, cool that someday, some kid like watches and it makes them a horror fan, or some kid like really connects with it. And I mean, cause that's what, that's absolutely what was the deal with me. So yeah, I want to do both. I want to, I want to continue to act, I'm definitely, in search of, whatever the next project for me to direct is going to be. And I really just want to be able to continue to play in this, in this world. This is, a place that I love to be, and acting is in my soul, and I think directing's in my soul, and writing's in my soul, and as long as I can continue to do any or all of those things, I'm a really happy, lucky man. I envy the kid who does Shudder roulette and lands on sequence break. And
oh man,
yeah.
I think that it was at the Phoenix Film Festival, maybe, where there was a group of like 16-year-old kids in there or something.
Whoa.
And I forget what it was. I forget exactly what the deal was, but they came up to me after and they were like, "Man, we didn't know anything about this movie, and somebody said it was about video games, and we just came in, and man, we've never seen anything like that before in our lives." And
oh my
just
gosh.
like, yes, like that, that's what it was like. Like when I was talking with somebody today about the first time I saw In the Mouth of Madness.
Oh yeah.
I had never seen a Carpenter film. I was probably like 12 or 13, and I remember I had every weekend my mom would let me choose a VHS, a movie to rent for the weekend. And so I would go to the horror section, and this is before my horror knowledge basically extended to, I know that Jason and Freddy are things that exist, but I'm always too scared to watch those movies, And then I just remember looking through and going, gosh, this seems like an interesting, this cover art's really interesting, and it's about books, and I like books, and I just remember that movie. I mean, if you think about it that way, that movie is a bonkers movie,
Really?
There's some wild ideas in it, especially for like a 13-year-old kid that doesn't, have any frame of reference for Lovecraft or any of that stuff. And so I just, I think about that, and I think about, how that really just got me excited about the possibilities of what a film can be, and, the possibilities of what art can be, and especially what horror can be. And, that's exciting. I hope that I hear, like I have cousins that are in college now, and I just can't wait for them to like show their dorm room this movie and hear what they think.
Yeah, absolutely. In the Mouth of Madness, the podcast that this interview is playing on is called In the Mouth of Dorkness. It's a direct reference to the Carpenter film. Because we're massive fans of that movie. It had tremendous impact on all of us.
Yeah, it was. I don't know if it was the time that it came out or what, or if it was like, Sam Neill, because it was right after Jurassic Park, wasn't it?
Yeah. No. Yeah. 2 years after Jurassic Park. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's. I don't know what it was. Because I'm sure that had an impact on me seeing it too. It was like, oh, it's the guy from Jurassic Park. But, but yeah, it's, I mean, I still say to this day it's my favorite Carpenter film. Like, I don't know that it's his best, but it's still my favorite. And I guess that goes to show the impact that nostalgia can have. It's what hits you when, and why it's important.
It's interesting. There is a little bit of connective tissue to In the Mouth of Madness and Sequence Break. I mean, they are kind of talking about how art and passion affects the mind.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm making that connection now.
I like that. No, I love that. I mean, it's it's funny. It's like I totally buy that would be. I mean, I've seen that movie probably 100 times. And so absolutely, like that's something like that is in your DNA. So I'm really, I like that. I'll go with that. I'll roll with it.
Excellent.
Nice. Those moments, right, when you're a kid, when you're 12 or you're 13 and you put something on, I mean, whether it's the time frame or whatever, the first time you experience that subject, like those 16-year-old kids who saw Sequence Break and their brains fucking melted because they're like, what is happening on this screen? Like, those are the things, like you said, mid-30s, right? Like, I want those moments in movies, and that's like, I'm looking for that too. Like, I still want to be affected by what I'm watching. Like, I want something that'll melt my brain, or something that will make me scared. Like, I want to come out of a movie and be scared. Like genuinely, like, I want to be concerned, not just tense, but like scared. Like, I look for those moments of like truth where you experience something that like changes your perception of life. Like that, like those kids are never going to be the same. You changed those 16-year-old kids' lives. They went in thinking, oh, a video game movie, and they came out of it totally different people.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting the way you put that, and I agree with you. I think that sort of an interesting idea is that part of the reason we love the stuff that we grew up with is because as you're growing up and you see these things, they surprise you. You know, even a trope that now, you know, might be just totally normal to us, that doesn't surprise us anymore. Man, when you first see it, that's incredibly impactful. You never knew somebody could do that before. You know, it's like when I first saw The Exorcist is the movie that really got me into, I think, appreciating horror as an art form, because I saw it when I was like 11 or 12 and it scared the hell out of me. But the next morning I woke up and I went, okay, I know that this is a fake movie. I know that a director made this. How did he do this? You know,
right.
How did this artist make this thing that affected me in this like profound way? And so I watched it over and over and over again all that day. And it was when I started seeing things like the head turning around, and you know, when you watch it again, you go, oh, I see the prosthetic now, you know, and like noticing things like that. I guess the point I'm getting at is that when you see something like that for the very first time, and you see like an effect that's pulled off that well, that you know, like now when I see effects like that, I sort of, you know, I know how they do it because I've been making movies and I've been seeing movies for long enough. But when you first see that, yeah, it changes your life. And I think that is why we really, or part of the reason why we latch so hard onto those things that we grew up with, because those were the first things that showed us, you know, what art could do. And that's, I mean, how much more impactful can you get?
No, that's exactly that. I have 3 kids, and my oldest girl is she's 8, and she's getting to a point where she wants to have some scary movies in her life, but she's not totally sure, you know, where it is, because she's 8, right? Like, what does she know?
Sure.
But she saw she saw a trailer for the Ghostbusters remake, and she wanted to see that, and so I showed that to her, and she really liked it a lot, and I thought that was really cool, and she appreciated the effects. Then last night, 2 nights ago, my wife and I are just fucking nerds, and we're doing Legos for date night, right? Like, we're building a new Millennium Falcon or whatever for date night. And I'm like, you know, we should put on a movie. And, you know, her younger sisters had just gone to bed, and she came out and she was like, hey, can I watch whatever you guys are going to watch? I said, all right. And so I put on the original Ghostbusters. And she just sat, like, eyes open, totally engaged the whole time she's watching this movie. And I, like, as a parent, like, cool, like, great. I'm happy to show her what she wants, and you know, every kid's got to know their limits in terms of what they want to go. And as a parent, it's a tough road to navigate. But like, as a film fan, I'm watching my kid. I watched her watch the movie. You know, I didn't watch Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
I watched her watch the movie, and like, I watched her eyes get wide at moments, and you know, because I know that movie by heart. Like you were talking about.
Yeah.
You know, these movies that move you, you know them by heart, and I didn't need to see the movie. I watched her watch it, and it's cool to watch somebody like have that moment and experience that. And I guess that's not really a question so much as just carrying on the conversation, right? Like.
Oh yeah, no, I get it. I mean, I have a 5-year-old niece, and I just recently got to growing up, my favorite movie by far was a Rankin Bass animated film called The Flight of Dragons.
Yeah.
That movie, do you guys know that movie?
Yeah.
So that movie I must have seen that movie 500 times. Like I loved that movie, and so I got it on DVD, and apparently there's a Blu-ray coming out, which I'm super excited about. But, you know, I got it on DVD and I gifted it to my niece, and I said, you know, I really want to show this to you. And I sat down. It was the same thing for me. I hadn't seen it in a while, but I was watching her watch the movie, and to watch her have those experiences, just, you know, like, I mean, there's a big death in that movie that, I mean, it brings tears to my eyes even just thinking about it. And to watch her, especially as a 5-year-old, experience that kind of like emotion, because of art, like, it's a really powerful experience, and I can't exactly put my finger on it, but, you know, I mean, I know that's, you know, it was like when I decided I wanted to be an actor, it was because, you know, I just knew how impactful, like, watching Anthony Hopkins in Silence of the Lambs was for me. You know, watching Bruce Campbell in Army of Darkness, you know, or like Jeff Combs and Reanimator, you know, it's like you watch these actors and you watch their performances and you just go, I want to be that for somebody.
How weird was that for you? But like, I mean, for you, for Reanimator, like bro, right? Like that's you have that moment as a kid, and then you grow up and you're doing this thing. That's got to be wild, right?
That was surreal as hell, man. Surreal as hell. It was the role of a lifetime, and I mean, working with Stuart, was one thing because obviously, like I've loved his movies, ever since I was a kid, and then on top of that, you're like working with him and you're a colleague, and he's just such a kind and smart and brilliant guy. So I'm getting to work with him, and then all of a sudden it comes around to opening night, and they're like, "Oh, Jeff and Barbara and Bruce are here in the audience." You're going, "Oh shit."
What are you saying that? Like right here, like I've imagined just like a shell shock face. Like I guess obviously that was always going to happen, but it's now happening. That's gotta be.
It's like wow. Yeah, it's like wow, it's here right now. And I asked Stuart if they were sitting in the splash zone because in that show we had like it was like the first 3 rows would get bloody and would get wet, and they said no, they're not sitting in the splash zone. And then as my recollection of it is that Stuart then turned around and said, "But you have my permission to shoot beyond the splash zone if you see where they are." Okay. I sort of half chickened out. I raised up. I'm holding Dr. Hill's intestine at the end, and it's like basically a hose. And so I raised it up to arc over to them, and I just see Jeffrey Combs dive for the ground. I'm like, okay, I'll stop. But afterwards, Jeff was incredibly nice to me, and so supportive, and we talked for a while, and he said, it was very surreal for me to see, this role that I created up there, but it was really exciting, and he goes, "Can I give you one note?" Ooh. I said, "Sure." And he said, "When you're in the basement, just loosen your tie a little bit." Huh. I went, "Oh, okay, yeah." And it was a thing that, it's a small thing, but it made a lot of difference. And it made total sense. And it was such a little nuance that only somebody who had lived that would be able to pick up on. And then there was a very sweet moment where I went and saw him in his one-man show, Nevermore, that Stuart also directed. And I went up, went backstage afterwards and said hi. And he sort of asked me how Reanimator was going because we were still, performing it at the time. And I said, "Oh, it's going great." And he said, "Well, awesome. That makes me really happy. And, well, good for you, man. You're Herbert now." Wow. For him to say that to me, well, I think it speaks a lot to him being such a classy guy and, such a great guy, but it just, I don't know. It meant a tremendous amount. And, it just shows the power of, the power that I think an artist can really have over somebody's life. It's important, and this is what made me who I am, and it's why I'm here right now.
Well, I know that we started out the conversation about whether or not this was your genuine feature debut with Sequence Break. I know you played around and made the Space Clown movies, but I'm really happy for you that you are being given this platform to have a movie that you released be put on Shudder, and that horror fans are going to get to experience that, like we experienced things as kids, and stumble across these things that are going to open the minds and expand the universe. I think that's a really lovely thing. Maybe that, as grown men, right, as grown-ups or adults, that's the new frontier, right, is having that moment and the ability to contribute back to the things that affected you and made you who you are.
Sure. Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah. I'm very lucky, and I'm always just in awe that this is where I am now, and just want to keep doing it as long as, until somebody catches me for the fraud I am.
Brad, Jeff, you think?
No, I can't believe you got to the Reanimator stuff, so thank you for sharing those stories. That's what delightful.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, man, I will. I could talk all day about that. That was such an amazing experience. Yeah, man, that was wild.
Dreams do come true, I guess, is really what that is. Holy shit!
Oh,
my reaction to hearing that is I think yours. It's like what an insanely surreal moment where you have this thing. Like I don't know, I liken it to sort of me I write reviews about movies. You know, I'm just a dude who writes in a basement about movies that he likes and tries to spread the good word or whatever. But then you get a chance to talk to people who make these movies that you dig. Like suddenly that's a real thing. And then suddenly you get a chance to meet and have a peer-to-peer interaction with people who move you on the screen and something that you value. It's such a fucking cool thing, man.
It's so, yeah, it's amazing. And I think, you know, like, you know, your question earlier about like social media and what that does. I mean, I think that has a lot to do with it, you know, and it has a lot to do with, you know, now we have this ability to actually get to have these conversations with the people that inspire us and you know, and I mean, the indie horror community, you know, is also like so tight knit. I mean, we're all just a bunch of weirdos that love making cool, weird shit, you know? And so, of course, we get along and we're all, I mean, for the most part, I mean, you know, we're all just like super supportive of everybody's work and of just wanting to help people, you know, do more cool stuff. And so it has been a really cool experience to get to meet these other filmmakers, even ones, you know, like Stuart, of course, included, but, you know, other people that have inspired us over the years and then go, oh, well, not only are they just a normal person, you know, but we actually have quite a bit in common. And it's really interesting to hear their take on this stuff. And I don't know. Yeah, it's a really cool time to be a horror fan and a really cool, you know, a really lucky time, you know, for me to be a horror filmmaker. Yeah, it's a cool horror world out there.
So, I guess really I just have one question left that I want to get into, and it kind of speaks a little bit to, it is a very cool time, to be a filmmaker, but, I'm sure what you know is it's really hard to make a movie. And it's a struggle to get a movie put together from conception to writing to shooting to post-production to finding a distributor. Like that is such a laborious process where, you know, the payoff is your burst of conversation, right? Where you meet the 16-year-old kids who it just blew their minds, right? So my question is, you know, when you're having a shit day and you're very frustrated with your process and nothing feels like it's going right, like what's the one moment that you look back in your career that makes you feel like, you know what, no, this is the thing that makes it all worthwhile?
Oh gosh, that is a really good question. Yeah, you know, I mean, I think a lot about that opening night of Reanimator. You know, and about like, I mean, there were a lot of, you know, big change. Like I had to move to LA to do it. You know, that was a big change. You know, I used to, you know, be very, very involved in a comedy troupe that I loved very much. And I sort of had to leave that behind, you know, to go on this new adventure. And, you know, it wasn't always easy, you know, trying to like wrap your head around that. But then, you know, I think about like that moment of meeting Jeffrey Combs, you know, or, you know, that moment of like, you know, standing on stage at TIFF with Almost Human, you know, yeah. and going, wow, like I remember being on set with Joe and saying, so where do you want to premiere this? You know, and I'm thinking, you know, I'm thinking like some lower tier festival or something, you know, I don't know. And then he goes, well, man, I mean, TIFF Midnight Madness, that's the dream. You know, that's the dream. Yeah. And then I will never forget getting that call from Joe at 11 p.m. and he goes, dude, we got into TIFF. And, you know, and it's like, and to think back on that and think about, wow, then standing there and going, you know, here's a movie, you know, that Joe made on his credit cards and that I met Joe through doing Reanimator, you know. So it all goes back through that and just thinking like, we all make a lot of sacrifices and it's definitely not always an easy road, but then it pays off in those ways. You know, and just to even have somebody, you know, come up to you at a film festival and say, hey, I really love your work, you know, or, you know, tell you that, you know, like The Mind's Eye was, you know, really special to them, or that Beyond the Gates really meant something to them, or whatever it was, it always makes it really special. And I just hope that somebody experiences that with Sequence Break. You know, cause I think that's the biggest impact that we can have, as artists.
I think that's a beautiful answer. I love it. So Sequence Break hits on Shudder on May the 25th, this Friday, right? Is that accurate?
May 24th, actually, on Thursday.
Oh, okay, Thursday. Excellent. All right, so May the 24th. And then we saw you in All the Creatures Were Stirring at the Chattanooga Film Festival, which fucking love that movie, by the way. I know we didn't talk about it.
Thanks. Yeah, I know. I was really happy with it, too. That was my first time seeing it. I really enjoyed it.
So wait, you were at Chattanooga?
I was in Chattanooga.
I wish we had linked up then. That would have been good. I mean, we got a chance to talk to a bunch of indie filmmakers, but that's what you were saying before about it's a cool time to be an independent filmmaker and making horror movies and genre films and stuff. Like Chattanooga Film Festival for us, it's like Candyland for filmmakers, right? Like you get to go and you get to hang out and have a good time and learn from your peers and interact with them. It's cool.
Oh yeah. Oh, it's great. It's like my heaven on earth is going and being at film festivals. It's an amazing experience. And I highly recommend just to anyone listening, even if you're not a filmmaker or whatever, like I know some of these film festivals might seem kind of expensive, but it is so cool to get to go to them, So like, I always tell people like, if you live anywhere near Chattanooga, go to the Chattanooga Film Fest.
Yeah.
If you live anywhere near Austin, go to Fantastic Fest, Like, these are great times, and you get a chance to go and hang out with these filmmakers and meet them, and it's always a great time.
Amen.
Yeah. So you got anything else that you want to push people towards to have them check out?
Yeah, gosh, I mean, you brought up All the Creatures Were Stirring. There's a movie on Shudder right now that I'm in called Downrange.
That's on my to-watch list.
Yeah, I was really grateful to get to be a part of that. It's Ruhei Kitamura, who of course did Versus and Midnight Meat Train, among many others, and he was just incredible to work with. So check that out. It's pretty fucking bleak and grueling, but it's awesome. There's a movie I'm in called Dementia Part 2 that is totally bonkers and on the film festival circuit right now. And yeah, just, please check out Sequence Break and, if you think about it or if you like it or whatever, like if you join Shudder to watch Sequence Break, tweet to Shudder about it. Let them know. I want to, it's always nice, I think, to let, to let those folks know, that people are appreciating the film.
Absolutely. All right. Well, man, this was a really excellent conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us. I love this. This was awesome.
Oh, thank you. I loved it too. Yeah, you guys were great to talk to, and I'd love to, yeah, man, I'll come back and chat anytime. I mean, this is literally, like when I'm just hanging out at a bar with my friends, this is literally what we talk about. So,
nice. Well,
anytime.
Cool, man. Well, you got my cell phone number. We're always happy to have you on the podcast. Next time you got a project coming out, hit us up, man. We'll have you on anytime.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you guys and for taking the time with me, and thanks for supporting the film and helping spread the word about it. I really appreciate it.
All right, man. Have a beautiful day.
All right. Yeah, you guys too. Take care.
Take care. All right. Bye.
All right.
And we're back in the Dork Cave. Billy, oh my God.
Dude, that was a great conversation. I loved it.
We talked about In the Mouth of Madness.
Which, this is what the podcast is named after. As soon as you brought that up, you should have seen Brad's eyes light up. It was like a child at Christmas. It was really great.
That was literally the last movie on the planet Earth that I thought was going to be referenced today. And I think I did a bang-up job of tying both movies together.
I know, as far as I understand it now, that's officially canon. They're in the same universe.
And, how great was it to hear him talk about his turn as Herbert West in Reanimator the Musical?
Dude, I love that story so much.
To be honest, I wanted to start the conversation there because how wild is that? Yeah. We're such huge Reanimator fans on ITMOD to talk to a guy who's had a little taste of the Stuart Gordon universe. Oh my gosh. So thankful for Graham for being willing to talk about, his breakthrough in a lot of ways.
Well, and I think that's kind of what makes these conversations so cool. And I think what Graham exemplifies is, the people for this interview series they're always so generous and they're so candid, and he fits that to a mold. I love that.
Yeah. And, he's just driving around LA chatting to us. I imagine that he was waiting for us to shut up so he could get into the drive-thru of an In-N-Out burger. Because that's what I'd be doing.
No, that makes sense.
Yep.
I assume that's what was happening.
So yeah, if you haven't been inspired to get that free trial of Shudder now, what are you waiting for? What's going on? I think we convinced you.
Yeah,
you got to do it.
At the very least, get the free trial for Shudder. Like I have been a huge fan of these niche digital streaming services, and I like at some point we should just have a conversation about how like the streaming market is changing and talk about that extensively, because like having somebody show up who like Filmstruck shows up and does classic films, Shudder does up, and they really represent the horror community. So if you're into somebody like who is going to represent your interests as horror or genre film aficionados, and like they're killing it,
and they have an insane catalog. I mean, it's really not just new films like Sequence Break, but and films like Revenge. Oh my God! If you haven't seen Revenge yet, you should probably do that.
100%. That movie's amazing.
But they've got classics on there as well.
Well, and they've also got not classics. I mean, movies that are just purely not classics. But like movies that if you were like, well, maybe spend $15 to go find a DVD of this, I would say yes, but folks might not say yes to that. And like the barrier to entry on a lot of those is so low that like you can just tune into a movie and check it out and see if it's for you. Like I really love what they're doing.
Are you telling me The Wraith is not a classic, Billy?
No, I would never say such a thing. How dare you suggest I said otherwise?
Okay, because The Wraith's a classic, and it's on Shudder right now. Okay, I think we've done our job promoting the website, the streaming service that does not pay us at all.
Right, seriously, they don't. But Shudder, what's up?
Yeah, come on. We need that promo money. All right, ITMOD listeners, thanks for tuning in once again. We've got more awesome chatcasts coming your way. Yep. Some really killer ones that I'm frankly surprised would agree to be on ITMOD. But until then, please follow Graham Skipper on Twitter. He's at Graham Skipper. Check out his film Sequence Break. It is a trip. And Billy, where can we find you right now?
So you can find me at Twitter at WBDAS, and you can find my writing on Film School Rejects. The only thing that I would hype from the writing right now is go check out Brad and I's interview series from Chattanooga Film Festival. The Wolfman Scott Nards guys conversation. We talked with those guys at Chattanooga. The write-up series for those are, I think, really going great.
And you've been slaying it by getting them out there. I'm a little behind on a couple conversations. Don't worry. I'm going to get back to them, Billy. I saw that as just judgment. That wasn't like a promo. That was Billy saying, Brad, get off your ass and start transcribing some interviews.
I mean, that's how I feel, I suppose. Maybe I was too expressive with my face. These damn soulful eyes.
So, yes, Billy, and you're at WB
Yes, on Twitter.
Okay, awesome.
So what are you writing these days at Film School Rejects, Brad?
I just did an interview with Paul Schrader, sir, and you can find me every day writing hot takes on Jake Gyllenhaal being Mysterio in Spider-Man Homecoming Part 2. Yeah, and you can find me at MouthDork on Twitter, on Instagram, on Untapped. Please follow the other dorks who weren't able to make it to this interview today. Follow Darren at the Disco Dork on all social medias. Follow Brian at the Turtle Dork 1, at the Turtle Dork 2, whatever, on Instagram and his social medias. I can't keep track of it. Be Young Video on Facebook. Follow Lisa, my beautiful wife, at Sidewalk Siren, and now at Bake Dork on Twitter.
Oh, yeah.
And follow her baking blog. And is that everybody who's on this podcast? We have like 100 people on this podcast now. But it's a lot. And yeah, follow at ITMODcast on all social medias. I'm going to shut up now. Goodbye.